Hi,
Hey,
Nathan.
how are ya?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Amazing. Well, thanks for doing this.
Of
Excited
course,
to
yeah. Thank
chat.
you for having me. I'm pumped.
Yeah, likewise. It looks like people are still joining, but this will be recorded, so I think we should just get started.
Cool. Let's do it. Let's
Is
jump
that
in.
cool? All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, for those people in the audience, hi everyone. Welcome. My name is Megan Lightcap. I run the Slow Creator Fund here at Slow Ventures. We back, entrepreneurial creators. We're best in class. We've backed everyone from Jonathan Katz-Moses, who's an expert woodworker, to Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, to Taylor Cannon, who's an amazing physical therapy creator. And I'm joined here today by Nathan May. We met a couple months ago, I believe. And you're like a, all-star newsletter guru. So I figured this would be a really fun conversation to kind of extract all of your knowledge and share it with our community. Just to tee it up, and I'll let you kind of intro yourself, but Nathan runs the Feed Media, where he works with creators and media companies to turn newsletters into real business infrastructure. Like I said, wealth of knowledge, so I have a whole bunch of questions for him today, and looking to cover everything from subscriber and content quality, how to unlock revenue with newsletters, paid growth and scaling newsletters, and if we have time, even touch on how to think about a newsletter acquisition or some of the exits in the space. So maybe just to get started, Nathan, do you want to give your background and some of the types of clients that you work with and what you do at the Feed Media?
Yeah. We're the largest agency that partners with awesome people who use newsletters to sell all kinds of stuff: ads, digital products, services. We work with a lot of what I would call more like pure play media companies. So I have this buddy Rowan. He runs the Rundown, is the largest AI newsletter in the world. Those kind of folks, and a lot of big personal brands, people like Cody Sanchez, Jay Shetty, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Those kind of folks. We bring high quality readers who buy from your sponsors.
Amazing, thank you. And you're based in New York.
Based in New York, yeah. We just got an office 8 weeks ago, so I'm in our spot.
Congrats. Yeah, amazing. So maybe a good place to start for everyone, because I'm not entirely sure who's watching or who's listening, but maybe just frame the newsletter opportunity, like why people should care, kind of what does the opportunity look like if executed really well?
Yeah, I remember when I first heard of I knew of newsletters like Morning Brew and The Hustle, but I was like, those can't be like amazing, huge businesses. And like I started hearing about this company Beehiiv. I was like, what's this newsletter thing? Why should I care about email? And it's pretty incredible. So why should somebody care, especially if they have an audience? I would say two things. Number one is that there is no better channel to convert people to actually like get people to like purchase things. You send valuable stuff too, right? It's not just all like transactional email stuff. But creators, B2B business owners, people who start email lists, extremely good job of like converting people into customers. It's like the best channel you have. If you look at people like Alex Hormozy, his number one channel by far is email. Then it's YouTube, and then Instagram, and a couple other things. And I think the second reason is people want to. There's this thing going around of like owning your audience. Like what is that? Maybe people have heard that before, and it's really come out of the fact that a lot of the big social media companies are changing their rules. Google has dramatically changed how you rank in SEO, and that's hurt companies like HubSpot. And now virtually every like social media platform is going through this thing that people call like the death of the follower, where everybody kind of saw TikTok, and they're like, well, TikTok's amazing at keeping people on platform. And well, what does TikTok do? TikTok doesn't particularly care how many followers you have. It's like you could have 0 followers. If you can keep somebody glued to that video, so there's more ad dollars, right, attributable to that person, amazing. And then Instagram Reels copied it. Now even like the written platforms, LinkedIn and Twitter, they've moved to feed-based content, not necessarily showing you people who you follow. So if you're a creator, you kind of like, you don't want the rules change on you. You want to actually
Sure.
own the communication channel with your folks.
Yeah, I feel like we saw a huge spike in at least creators driving people to newsletters back in, I guess, this time last year in January when TikTok was down for like 24 hours or whatever. People were like, oh my God, this is the moment. I guess the other kind of tee up question I'd love for you to touch on is, obviously your clients span from creators, right, and personal brands where the newsletter is one component of what they're doing to media companies where like the newsletter is the business. Like how do you think about those two clients differently in terms of what you focus on, what you're driving towards, and perhaps when you answer that question, just think about like who may be in the audience and how to think about, you know, the rest of the session depending on.
Yeah. So both models work. So I think about it. So if you're on this call, you should probably think about, oh, well, is my newsletter the product? Like I sell ad space, I sell attention, or do I use a newsletter / email to drive people to my products or services or whatever it may be? Both can work, right? I mean, the canonical, like the popular examples on the media company side are like Sam Parr, The Hustle, or like Morning Brew, but there are many examples, like even more recently. So I have a buddy, Ron Chung, he runs The Rundown, largest AI newsletter in the world. It's 3 years old. They will do something far north of $10 million this year, totally bootstrapped. He gets to run around and talk to Sam Altman and Mark Zuckerberg. I have another buddy, CJ Gustafon, who he has maybe 75,000 subscribers on his newsletter. Relatively small list in the grand scheme of things. He'll do 3 million this year. I have another friend, Secret CFO. He doesn't even show his face. Yeah. I can't say his numbers, but very great newsletter, big business, even at 30 or 40,000 readers, because they have like these awesome sponsors who help support the content. The other side also works super well. So newsletter is like helping drive the product, right? You use email, you say valuable things, you give away the secrets, and then you sell the execution. And the execution is cohort-based courses or services or software, whatever the thing it is that is your product. And so some examples there, I have a buddy, this guy Max Sturdivant. He started an agency called Well Copy at the University of San Diego. His entire funnel is Instagram down to using a lead magnet to pull people down to an email list. He has 20,000 people on his email list. That's how he gets all his calls booked. He did $500,000 in December, and he's 23 years old, like 6 months out of college. There's so many examples of this that are not just Cody Sanchez and Sam Parr and Sean Purry. Like there's tons of people with small audiences building these awesome lists.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny as we're talking, I'm like literally thinking about my newsletter, where like the product for me is actually like deploying capital, right, and deploying investment dollars, but it's no different than what you're talking about, right, which is funnel is a newsletter into an experience, then shift them over to convert elsewhere. So
do you know
one of the topics
Alex Pattis, by the way?
Who?
Do you know Alex Pattis at all? He runs Riverside Ventures or something, but he venture investor. He does something like $700,000 or $800,000 a year just on the newsletter between media deals and like syndication stuff. Aside from the funds, like even the financial industry, like doing really well. So it's
I could have a whole other income stream. I'm excited about this.
Yeah.
So I mean, and again, like this is a very personal question, but as you know, one of the things that besides like the headline number of subscribers that I'm focused on is like subscriber quality. And so I know that this is something that like you talk and think about a lot. How do you define a high quality subscriber, and like especially early on before you have like real revenue data to understand it?
Yeah. So I think about it depends a little bit on what you sell. So let's go ads versus like digital products versus services. So there's a lot, like it's like how valuable is your customer? So for instance, on the service side, like we have customers who individually are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. They stay with us for a long time, and it's an agency service, it's a high ticket service. Therefore, like quality is like the most important thing for me. It's all that I care about. And so I think about, I started this agency on February 20th, 2024. So we're a little under two years old. We went from zero to about $1 million of ARR in about 10 and a half months. We hit it in like November, December of 2024. And all I did was take people who I wanted to work with on LinkedIn. I invited them down to my newsletter. I tried to say things that were really valuable, and that's how we ended up building the business. So there I'm like literally handpicking who I want on the newsletter. That's the far end, right? When you quality is the only thing that matters. On the ad side, right, all the way at the other end of the spectrum, there it's more of a volume game. You need tens of thousands of subscribers to really make like a full-time income if you don't sell your own products. But the primary like engagement, or rather KPI for quality, is like, do people open? Do people click? Right? If you're going to spend money advertising in a newsletter, I mean, you better hope that people are going to like see your ad, and you hope they're like clicking on your ad, and that's what people care about.
And I mean, conversely, is the other way to measure like if you're kind of attracting the wrong audience, like super low open rates, super low click-through rates, or is there anything else where you're like, where you can kind of be like, ooh, maybe I'm actually targeting the wrong pool of people here?
Yeah, so I will say, so most of the folks here, like if you have a large audience already, you will rarely run into this issue. So the first thing you should do if you have a big audience is just pull the audience you have down to the newsletter. So for, there's many ways to do that. One of the most common ways are lead magnets. And you're very unlikely to pull low quality people down if you're doing this because it's people who already know, like, trust you. So lead magnets is like, give somebody something that's super valuable. So if you curated a list of like every major deal into their creator economy in the last year, who was the main investor, what was the valuation at, what were the pitch decks, everybody would want that thing. And then you're gonna do, let's say it's on LinkedIn, that's going to blow up, right? It's going to add followers to your LinkedIn audience, and then you're going to email gate that. So people are going to add it to your newsletter. There's different creators, I'm sure, on this with different platforms. You can do this on Instagram using ManyChat. There's a version of this for every like major social media platform. If you do that, I would start there because you'll definitely get high quality people. When you start moving to paid ads, that's when you really need to watch a lot more carefully to make sure you're not bringing in the wrong people. And so quickly, like in the first like 3-4 weeks of like starting ads on like Facebook, for instance, we are meticulously monitoring, are people opening with, let's say, a 40% or higher click-through rate? Are they clicking at least 3 to 5% would be like, I would say about average for readers who are coming from a channel like Facebook ads. And that's your like initial KPI because it comes fast. You can see that right away. The down funnel stuff, the stuff that takes a little bit of time to happen is like, are people going to buy my digital products? Are they going to book a call or whatever your funnel is for your product?
Right. And how do you know, like, at what point or like what are the signals that exist where you can understand if your list can support sponsorship revenue, like paid revenue from subscribers, or even like product spin-offs? Like at what point are you like, okay, I have something here, I have a very strategic asset in this list, like let me start to think about monetizing? What are some of the signals that may indicate you're there?
Yeah, so sticky audience, so like high open rate, high click-through rate, like especially if you have like a 50% plus open rate, 5% plus click-through rate, it's like, okay, people here are like really, really engaged, like I should be very happy with this. The rules change a little bit based on what you're selling. So I think a lot of it comes back to like, you should think of this like a business, right? And it's like, what's your product going to be from day one? Like, what's the vision? You don't have to know exactly it's going to be this quarter course for this 5 weeks, but you should know like, there's only 4 things you can sell in life. You can sell services, right? You can sell software, you can sell information, and you can sell physical products. I would have some idea of what category you would like to be in and start with a hypothesis. And ads I would put within information. Ads, you generally need a like large newsletter, maybe tens of thousands of people to start being interesting to sponsors, although I know people who make good ad revenue at 10,000 readers. The number one thing, the easiest thing to sell and quickly monetize are like higher ticket things. So if you sell ads, you're monetizing every reader a tiny bit. But if you sell high ticket stuff that's expensive, digital products, services, you're going to monetize a smaller group of your audience, but the value of each of those customers is going to be very, very high. And so I generally recommend to people like pick a like $1,000 or more thing to sell, whether that's a digital product or service, and start with that. And ultimately at that point it's kind of like, are people buying, right? You can do a launch, you can pre-sale stuff in weeks, right, without even having the fulfillment like ready to go, just to get a sense of, is this something that people are going to be interested in?
Yeah. And then switching over to content quality from subscriber quality. So, and again, this is something that like I think about constantly. How should folks think about balancing content that drives engagement today versus like delivering consistently valuable content that really builds like long-term trust, right? Like you could, if you're just juicing for clicks or signups, like you could do the listicle thing or like sugar water content, but like what is the right way to think about kind of balancing those two things?
Yeah. So the types of content that I think work well. So I would say the overall principle you should think about when you write or produce any kind of content, frankly, if you're going to sell something that's behind that, is you want to give away the secrets, sell the execution. So be extremely open book if you're doing tactical content, let's say even if it's like woodworking, I don't know if it's woodworking or paid ads or how to build an e-commerce business that's $10 million a year, like give away everything you know in the content down to the metrics, and you will endear yourself. You will build so much trust that many people will say, hey, I would like to learn from you and pay you for your time or for your products, or this sounds amazing. I believe you can do it. I believe it works. I don't want to do it. Could you just do it? Could we just become a client of yours? That is how I would think about it. When you break that down to tactical types of content, there are a few, but I'll give you two things I'd recommend people here do if they're going to start newsletters. Two types of formats. Because I remember when I started writing a newsletter, I was like, you start with a blank page. It's kind of like, I don't even know what to write about. Like,
every
what
week
should this
you're like,
look
what
like?
Yeah.
And so I almost think of like newsletters as like blocks of content, like Lego blocks, and you can stack different blocks together, and you have a newsletter, and that's not so scary. And the one of the most popular ones, I would say, is called what I call like the personal letter. So it's generally written to the audience, like I'm speaking to you. Generally, it introduces like a problem that you had, or you had somebody have. So for instance, Justin Welsh to me is like one of the best examples of a personal letter. And he'll walk through a problem, like let's say he comes back from a vacation and he's got 150 emails from people who want a little bit of his time. And he's got this big strategic stuff he wants to work on, and so like he has to step away to do it. And the whole newsletter is like introduce problem, introduce how most people try to solve it, which is most people drop the important thing they're doing because the urgent thing, I got all these emails, you want to do it now. But why does that not work? Why does the common way to solve it not work? Is like his section 3. Well, it turns out if you drop the important thing you're doing, you think you're gonna jump here and like triage the fire, then you're gonna get right back into productivity. But we all know that never happens, right? You spend hours on the thing and it takes you a second to like get back into like being productive. And then he talks about the right way to do it. And he has this prioritization framework, like, is something important and urgent, then I do it. Many things are urgent, but they're not important, and I delegate or I don't do those. That's the personal letter. And then the other one I'll say a little bit more quickly, but it's like the curation, the classic curation newsletter, which is what I would call like a morning brew or the rundown, where you're summarizing news for the majority of the content, 70-80%, 2 to 3 stories, and then you give your take underneath each of those stories. Those are the most common types of newsletters.
Can you give us one more format?
Yeah, I would say deep dives. So a deep dive to me is like an extremely long piece of content on like one topic. So if you look at like Lenny Richetsky has this famous newsletter that he wrote on how Uber, Airbnb, and a bunch of companies got their first 1,000 users, and he researched the heck out of that thing. That thing is still referenced today, 3 or 4 years later. It's become an evergreen, like pillar piece of content for people starting companies.
Yeah, super helpful. I feel like this is the personal coaching sessions. This is great. And again, back to kind of like, what do you think the right cadence is for keeping an audience engaged without totally flooding their inbox and being annoying?
Yeah, the way I think about it in the beginning is like you want to commit to things that you could do for 6 months, for a year, right? And so my newsletter that I write, so I have a newsletter, it's generally invite only. We've started to open up a little bit more, but it's all about like, it started as like, I write to people who already make millions of dollars, right? Creators, entrepreneurs, etc., who use newsletters and email as part of their funnel. And I just share like super, super tactical stuff. I forget what was the thing. What was the second part of your question? You were saying?
Basically like, what's the right cadence?
Without
being annoying, but like, keeping people engaged and
I write mine twice a month. I write it every 2 weeks, which is like almost nothing, right?
Yeah.
I would recommend starting to write once a week or twice a month, because that you can do. You can commit to something like that. I wouldn't worry about doing daily. You can do that over time. And I saw, I think, a question in the chat about like, okay, cool, well, I read it once a week or I read it 5 days a week, but regardless, what percentage of my content should be sales versus value, and how do I make sure I'm not too salesy? The way that I think about this is actually, so there are 2 founders I like a lot, Nicholas Cole and Dickie Bush. They run a company called Premium Ghostwriting Academy. They do something like $700,000, $800,000 a month. Great business. Their give to ask ratio is something like 1 to 6. So 1 out of every 7 pieces of their content is an explicit ask to book a call, for instance, for their community. So roughly 14% right of your content. I like that. That is roughly in line with how I think about it.
Got it. I know a lot of creators or even like media companies that have a personal brand have teams that help them write their content, or maybe like a team that's dedicated to newsletter. How do you help people think about maintaining their voice when they have others around them to support kind of writing the newsletter?
Yeah, you can do it both ways. My preference is to write the newsletter yourself and to be really focused on like informal like value. Like we did a launch for this guy Jesse Puggi, and we did $270,000 on a 15,000 person list. And I would walk through the Stripe dashboards. I show you the income right away, and I say exactly how we did that launch, like down to every detail. Like be so value focused. And I would start there, but and that's the reason why I like to write it, is like that's my own lived experience. Right. If you're going to do that, the way that I design it is I prefer writing my long form content. It is much easier than for a team, for people who work for us, to then turn that out into shorter form content. Justin Walsh actually does this. He writes his long form stuff. He has a hub and spoke model, and then he'll have people who help him turn that into LinkedIn posts or Instagram posts. I prefer that because then you control the voice, you control the value, and then people just need to regurgitate that value in a shorter format. I think it's one of the highest leverage things you can do as a founder.
Okay, now switching gears to let's kind of focus on creators. Like you have a big, maybe social audience, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, and you're trying to get people, funnel them into a newsletter experience. And maybe it's like not working, or big social audience but small email list. Like what's the first thing you look to diagnose the problem? Like what would be your hunch as to why people aren't converting?
Usually it's like, do I mention the newsletter enough? And number two is, am I giving people a compelling reason to subscribe? So do I mention enough is, for instance, like, not that, let's say you do YouTube or something, and it's not that like every like mid-roll thing should be you mentioning the newsletter, right? Especially if you sell ad space, then you have monetized real estate versus non-monetized real estate you have to think about. But like, for instance, the in your description, the first link that you have that is above the fold, right before somebody clicks see more, should be the link to your newsletter. That's going to drive a lot of people there naturally. The pinned comment on your YouTube video should be a link to your newsletter or a link to a lead magnet. So for instance, I've seen people who really want to convert as many people as possible go, well, maybe they'll do a video. I have this buddy, Nick Sarav, who does a lot of AI automation stuff. He might have a hour-long video or a 30-minute video on how to use N8N or Make to do no-code or low-code automation. And then the newsletter might be, hey, I put together like my 5 favorite templates to use on Make. Click here and get it. And it's an email-gated series of templates. Not only then is he mentioning it, or not only is it pinned in all those other best practices, it is now also extremely congruent with the content. So you don't have to do that. Obviously, it's more work to do lead magnets and like do that every single time. But if you really wanted to max it out, I would go that direction. And so
is the like, because I'm just thinking back to last year when TikTok was went offline and people were scrambling to get people to sign up for their newsletter. Like, what is if you could give like one tip or trick where it's a little bit of like a reactive, like I need to own my audience now and I'm just starting on this newsletter thing. Like, how should creators think about why someone would give their email if there's not, they're not leading to a course, they're not like, gatekeeping information, like just kind of high level, they want to capture, they want to own their audience, they want to capture email, they want to move them off platform into a different experience. Like, what's the right framework for like why someone signs up, right? Like, could you ground it in like identity? Does it have to be utility? Does it have to be access? Like, what are some of the ways to think about it?
Yeah, I lean toward utility. So I think like you're gonna get more first or best. So if you're news, right? Like this TikTok video I do with breaking news. If you're somebody like Oliver Darcy, who's like an ex-CNN journalist, like, well, maybe his newsletter where he breaks the news first there. More is like the no-code example. So like, hey, I'm talking through these make automations, but like I go into even more detail and it's written out. You can just copy paste the prompts and everything on this newsletter that I send once a week. Well, that's more, right? I enjoy this current piece of content. I want even more of it. So how do I go deeper? And then best, I would say, is like not that different from more, but like for instance, like I give, I think, a healthy amount of like free advice via LinkedIn, but my best stuff, the deepest things, like the things I talk about with people who are already like larger in the newsletter space, it's always on the newsletter. Best can also mean like, hey, get instantaneous value by being on this newsletter, which is more like the lead magnet strategy. If you do one of those three things, it is very likely that you will pull people down to your list fast. I'll give you one quick example. There's a woman, her name is Millie. She runs a newsletter called The Generalist, and her funnel is TikTok down to newsletter. I don't know what her yearly revenue, but she has a community that sits in the back. It has done something like $700,000, $800,000 revenue rate. It's worked very well. And she has, I think, 50 or 100,000 people on TikTok. She's just mentioning like, I think advice, like personal finance advice and like career advice for like generous operators who don't feel like, oh, I'm not this one thing, so what even am I? And she's like, I talk about this all the time on the newsletter and it's free, like just come down to this. She's just mentioning it in her TikTok videos and link in bio as well, and people are coming down naturally, organically. She also has a quiz, which is sort of another funnel we could talk about, but that's worked very well for her.
So the other kind of element that I'm really interested in is like signing up for a newsletter as part of your identity. Right, like, and maybe this is I'm biased because I invest in creators who build cults and blah blah blah. But like, if you think about something like how the free press got started, like it was such a, I feel like, identity marker of like, I am someone that like wants to be in this orbit, or like even Emily Sundberg with Feed Me, right? Like there's a kind of this like cool kid tone to it, and some of like her contemporaries. Like, is that a viable kind of growth strategy, or is it sort of a byproduct of like the world that you build around yourself? Like, can you manufacture someone to sign up for identity purposes?
I think so. I mean, I think the reason that works is like, and I don't know too much about Barry, but like she was definitely willing to say things, regardless if you agreed with her or not, but things that other people were not willing to say. You know, she's saying like the quiet part out loud. And I think that at the end of the day, I don't know if like were people joining, you know, because she was first or best, so they just want like her. I don't have like a super strong opinion on that. I will say that I don't know that they're like mutually exclusive. I mean, like, so when I think about like my newsletter, like I want my stuff to be like the Rolex for people who are like using email to generate revenue. And as long as those people talk to each other, if you're in a market where there's like interaction between your readers, right, where people are going to the same conferences, or they're, in Barry's case, like you talking about politics at the dinner table, that to me is more like identity driven stuff. It's harder if like you're I don't know, if you're like doing penny stocks, you know, those people are all anonymous on Reddit, pseudonymous, and they're not talking. It's hard to find those people in real life. It's hard to get them together like that. So I'd say like small markets where people are meeting in person, or like probably things like politics where people take that very personally, right? And like that is where that kind of stuff like works well.
Shifting a little bit to revenue in newsletters, you think and talk a lot about like technical email structure. Like, what is one or two kind of behind the scene changes that oftentimes like immediately unlock revenue? Like, what's like a low hanging fruit change that someone can think about to start to generate revenue on their newsletter?
Yeah,
if they're stuck otherwise.
If you already have a large audience and you're monetizing with sponsorships on your social media accounts, the newsletter is just additional ad inventory that you can sell. And the way to position it is like, I mean, you know, maybe 10, 20% of your followers see any given, let's say, TikTok or Instagram or LinkedIn post. Well, 40 or 50%, you know, of your folks are going to see the email that you send out. It's a much higher engagement piece. It's also much more long form. It's like, great example of this, like Nick, the AI automation guy, he does, just to show you the relationships between platforms, he does about $400,000 a month. 90% of those sales are YouTube because it's long form, only 10% are Instagram because it takes like 50 reels to equal one YouTube video.
Right.
Newsletter is like right up there with like YouTube. It's even a little bit more engagement than YouTube. And so that's really compelling to a sponsor. So that's like way number one. The second way, and I think there's probably two ways, is create a product if you don't have one already. So a lot of people who are pulling people down to their newsletter, and let's say that you're, so I know a guy on Instagram who does stuff in the food space, and it's all about losing weight with like air frying recipes. He just sells a little like $64 PDF with like 30 air fry recipes that you can do in your Ninja air fryer like today. And that is sold hundreds of thousands of dollars. $65 PDF he made once just via his email list. So that stuff can be really powerful.
And if you think about, like, obviously the algorithms are forever changing on these social platforms. Like, have TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, like, have they become more or less valuable as top of funnel for newsletters? Or like, and then I guess as an extension of that, like, which do you think is sort of like the dominant platform to drive signups?
Yeah. The dominant one is where you already have an audience, right? That's the first thing I would think about. The second like layer I would use is, well, if you don't have an audience yet, but you're like, where should I go build? It is, on average, what is going to be most congruent with who your ideal customer is. And I'm going to be overgeneralizing a little bit, but like Instagram to me is very consumer, and like a lot of things you can show, like fitness or health and food, whereas Twitter is like entrepreneurs, but it's generally like more bootstrap entrepreneurs and kind of hustlers. Whereas LinkedIn is also a lot of founders, but it's more the enterprisey B2B folks. So think about where your customer is, and I build there, and that's where I would that's where I would use to pull people down to the newsletter. To your question on if it's getting harder, I do think it's getting harder for two reasons. One, none of the platforms are incentivized to let you take traffic off of their platform and like onto your own email list. Like, why would they want that? And you can see that on Twitter and LinkedIn. They nerf posts now that are doing links out to like non-LinkedIn or non-Twitter properties. And so it used to just be you could put a post up on Twitter and get like hundreds of like newsletter subscribers. You could still do some damage there. Generally, it's like lead magnets. They're going to be the things that pull people down. Like you have to do that. And I think increasingly that will only get more difficult, but you want to be doing it, right? Because again, talking about incentives, it will only further go in the direction of Instagram, LinkedIn, all these platforms of like, hey, it is way less important how many followers you have. It is only important how long can you keep people on their platform, spending time on your content so that they can show them more ads. And they do not care if you have 1 million or 1,000 followers. Obviously, it's easier to do that if you have 1 million. But the value of each individual follower will only go down as all this stuff gets more democratized. And so you're going to want to have somewhere to put those people.
Yep. I saw this question pop up in the comments, and then I have it. How do you think about Beehiiv versus Substack versus Kit versus, some other email provider? Which platform do you think is best in 2026?
Yeah, so my answer has changed, I would say. If you had asked me this question a year ago, I would have said ConvertKit if you sell digital products, Substack if you're more journalisty, or if you have if you have relationships, like big relationships on Substack, like with creators that are there, and then Beehiiv's kind of like the more new media upstart. If you don't have those things, but you're looking at started, maybe run paid ads or like monetize with sponsorships. It has changed. I would say the majority of people I recommend Beehiiv to, and that is because Beehiiv is caught up to ConvertKit. ConvertKit has, not to get into the minutia, but like extra features if you're selling digital products and automations and personalization in email that will let you sell those digital products better. Beehiiv is now largely caught up to that, and they have all the extra stuff with ad monetization, like analytics that help you if you're running paid ads, that help you make better decisions and bring in the best readers possible. On Substack, I like Substack. They made a move this year that I'm not particularly, or last year I guess, I'm not crazy about, which, many things, right? Substack wants to keep you on the platform, and so they, for instance, just like the Apple partnership thing, right? You can do subscriptions now with Apple Pay, but like I don't know that you necessarily get the email of that reader or can transfer that subscription if you ever want to leave, and then Apple takes a cut. All these things that I think are not as creator friendly as they could be. And I think that the people who grow on Substack, because Substack does have a big advantage on referrals over other email newsletter platforms, I think most of the benefit of those referrals go to either two types of people. One, Substack, you were already big, and so Substack knighted you. They put you on one of their lists where bunch of people see you naturally, or you have friends in high places. You know big creators on the platform who can refer readers to you. If either of those things are true, I think Substack is like probably one of the best choices you can make. You just have to come in with relationships.
Interesting. And now, as you think about like using paid spend, right, to grow your newsletter, what has to be true before paid acquisition makes sense?
Yeah. Typically, you want to already be generating revenue on your list, if you're bootstrapped, I would say. And then, like
to
all
the tune of
marketing.
How much? Like, when you say, like,
Yeah.
could it be $100, like 10,000? Like, what's the threshold?
Yeah, I would go to like, if you're making thousands or tens of thousands of dollars a month, you have enough data to get reasonable confidence in the thing that I would say next, which is you need to think about how valuable your reader is, and you need to quantify that. What is a reader worth to you? And then you can actually decide, well, how much can I go afford to pay for that reader on Facebook, for instance. And so I'll give you two examples. When we did the launch for Jesse on this 15,000 person newsletter, we made roughly $16 per reader. And one of the things we sold was a lower ticket product, like a $50 product that I think you could sell to cold traffic, people who don't even know you. And that we made like roughly $1.15. So I know like after a year, they'll probably make 10, 15 bucks on every reader. And so we can afford to go out to Facebook and pay even $3, $4, $5 for every reader. If you pay $5 for a customer and you're going to make $15 on that customer, right, a year from now, it'd be 3 extra money. Or if that were a stock, right, you'd buy that stock all day. Right. That's how I think about that. When you don't sell your own stuff, it's a similar kind of conversation. Most ad-supported or ad-monetized newsletters make somewhere between 20 cents to 40 cents per reader per month, which means that at the high end, you're making, let's say, $5 per year per reader, right? Just selling ads, not selling any of your own stuff that would obviously add on more revenue. And so the rule that people typically follow is like, well, if I'm selling sponsorships and that's working, and I go acquire a reader for $2 on Facebook, and I make $4 or $5 on that reader after 1 year, that's still like a really good bet. So I would continue to scale into that. That's how I think about it. How much is a reader worth? And you use that to let yourself decide how much you can afford to pay for a reader from any ad platform.
And where do you see paid growth like go wrong? Like what do people mess up most often?
Yeah, so
just not understanding that equation, or is there something more specific?
I think it's that, but once you're spending money, it is it's bringing in readers who are not high quality. And so on the consumer side, right, if you're in food or any other kind of consumer niche or woodworking, whatever it is, it's kind of like, well, the best KPI I have is, are people opening and clicking? And they'll run ads, they'll get really excited about getting folks for $1.50 or $1, and then they don't realize, they're not looking if those people are opening or clicking. Yeah. And that's dangerous. You want to be measuring that stuff, and Beehiiv and other platforms let you do that, but you need to be like looking at those dashboards on those platforms. If you're on the B2B side, all that stuff is still true, but then also generally you also want to make sure that you're bringing in the right type of reader. If you are an e-commerce newsletter and people are opening and clicking, but you're bringing people who want to start e-commerce companies and they're not doing $1 million or more with e-com, and that's who your advertisers want or who you would sell a project or a service to, well, that also doesn't do you any good. And so usually that's where things like surveys come in. You just ask people, like, hey, do you work in e-com? Does your e-commerce, are you a director or a VP or a founder or an associate? Does your e-commerce company make at least $1 million a year? You're asking people things on the front end, and we go, okay, cool. I can see who's coming onto this list, and I believe they're the type of person that I want. That's how I think about it.
But my second question, which is, but you kind of touched on, is like, how do you think about paid growth differently based upon the niche? But I guess you kind of hit on that. You know,
well, I mean,
more consumer oriented. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say like start with Facebook ads. That's the #1 platform. That's where the majority of newsletters find their readers, and measure it like the Facebook level. Are people opening and clicking? And if you really want to get fancy with it, you know, one of the reasons we like Beehiiv is like I can look and I can see, well, readers from ad A versus ad B versus ad C. let's break out their open rate and their click-through rate at that level, like even deeper. Because then if ad A is like really amazing engagement, I'm like, oh, well, let's forget ad B and C. Let's shut down those ads. Let's go all in on ad A. Those little optimizations, you don't need to think about those necessarily on day one. But if you're big already, and if you're like really having this be a big part of your revenue generation, you want to have those little those edges. That's what's going to help you, steamroll or crush your competition, to put it politely.
I know we only have a couple minutes left, and before there may be some questions. Gigi's, I guess, going to send us some, but I do want to touch just like for a minute or two on newsletter acquisitions. And so, how should someone think about when someone is acquiring a newsletter? Like, what is the acquirer really buying? And if someone, I guess, two-part question: if someone were trying to basically optimize their newsletter to get acquired, like, what would you do differently in kind of how you structure it, what you talk about, how you build an audience? Like, how would what would they do differently to set themselves up for an acquisition?
Yeah. So the best acquisitions are based on like revenue and profit. No different from any other business. But you'll see on Twitter, LinkedIn, it's like, oh, how much can I get per subscriber, per this thing or that thing? That is generally people with small lists who are not monetizing well, who just want to like offload a list, but not a business, right? You want to have a business, not an email list. And so to that end, like most newsletters that are profitable and like bootstrapped and doing, let's say 1 to 5 million, are probably going to get acquired for, 3 to 5x your last 12 months profit. Obviously, if you're like tackling a venture idea, if you're growing really quickly, there are these other things that like can help you get acquired for more, especially from strategics. So like the HubSpot bought the hustle from Sampar for a lot more than like 3 to 5x, but they were growing super fast. There was a great story. HubSpot has really high LTV, like expensive stuff. So for a strategic, it makes sense. That's how I would think about it. The second part of your question, like how should you structure it? Make sure the newsletter can exist without you being in the seat. So if I took 2 newsletters, there's a buddy of mine, Ruben Hassid, big AI creator, does really well with his newsletter, but it's all his brand. Rowan Chung, who runs The Rundown is the brand. If Rowan sold it, The Rundown could exist without him being in the seat.
Got it. Do you see questions? I feel like
I see in the chat.
I see a bunch of comments in the chat, but we are being told on social media that people are so tired of being sold to. How do you successfully execute selling your services without upsetting people?
Yeah, so I'll throw my newsletter in the chat at the end of this. We'll let people join it. But I talk a lot about this on the email list. I think part of it is like, if you are valuable, if you say really valuable things, people are okay with you making asks. So for instance, I mentioned a newsletter halfway through this call where I wrote about doing a digital product launch for this guy, Jesse Pucci, on a 15,000 person email list. We asked people like, hey, are you doing a digital product launch? We can help several times throughout that newsletter in a natural way. I was like, if this is interesting, like get in touch, you can click here and we have a form that people can fill out. That is very organic, right? I'm giving so much value and there's just a small ask dispersed throughout that. If you just focus on that, everything else will fall into place. Yeah, you can follow the 14%, 1 out of 7 rule, that stuff, but like if you just focus on like, again, giving away the secrets, sell the execution, you can't go wrong. When I email people and ask them to like hop on sales calls for instance, because I can see like who's opening, who's clicking, we never get a no. It's always a yes. These people were very warm. They're really willing to do a pilot together. It's because I've given so much. They're like, well, this person really knows what he's doing. Like, why not? Like, let's try something. That's what you should endear to try to do.
Amazing. Can you walk us through how you'd approach a nurture flow or email sequence designed to build trust and deepen connection with brand new subscribers or customers?
Yeah. So I'll give you 2 scenarios. Scenario A is you don't have a product and you're just getting started and it's like, how do I just move fast, Nathan? In that scenario, I would take your most popular newsletters that you've written, or as soon as you have those, the first 5, 6, whatever the 2 or 3 most popular are, and just send that as an automation. You lead with your best content so people are like, oh wow, this is like really amazing stuff. Once you're past that, you have more time on your hands, you sell your own product. Generally, you want to nurture people, and one way to do this, there are many, but you could do something like an educational email course. That's just a fancy term for like a 5 or 6 day email sequence where you're giving people a lot of value and showing them, let's say if you're a Premium Ghostwriting Academy, you want to teach people how to be ghostwriters, right? What are all the things you're going to need to do to become a ghostwriter? Well, you got to learn how to copywrite. You have to figure out what your niche is going to be. You have to find customers. You have to reach out to those customers. You have to know how to close those customers. There's 5 things. So they send you one email on each skill that you need to build, and they're just giving you a little bit of the top of each skill, right? Here's how to go from A to B. Here's one way to do each of that. Like, do you want more of that? Well, we have a coaching program. We'll work with you for a year, and we'll hold you accountable. We'll give you templates and everything in order to do these things. So give away the value, but just skim the top on your subject matter expertise, and then make call to actions for people to go deeper.
I need to do that welcome email. If your list is still small and growing organically, what would you not do, even though it's often recommended by growth folks, because it harms long-term trust with your audience, future customers?
I would say there's not too much that you could do wrong per se, other than like spitting up a new traffic source that's really low quality, or like only making your emails like always asking, only call to action. People are like, well, I feel like I'm just in a giant like marketing automation right now. You want to avoid those things. The biggest mistake I would say people make is not what they do, it is what they do not do. Most people want to grow organically forever, and if you start with a small audience, you can make that work and build a business out of it, but you need to sell high-ticket things, digital products or services, from day one. It is very hard to build a giant newsletter, 50, 100,000, to just sell ads from scratch if you don't have an existing audience, and if you want it to happen fast, you're going to need to use paid ads. So most people like think of organic growth as free, and I kind of go, well, no, you will always pay for growth. You'll always pay for subscribers. You just choose whether you're going to pay with your dollars, your capital, like on Facebook ads, or whether you're going to pay with your time. And so put great thought into where you will have the most leverage and act accordingly.
I know we're over time. Do you want to do one more question, or do you think we can wrap up here?
Let's do one more, and then for folks, so I'm going to open this up for about an hour after this. I put a link in the chat for my newsletter, and I just talk about how to like grow and monetize newsletters. So I'll keep that. It's typically closed as a list, but I'll keep that open for the next 60 minutes for people who want to take that, save that now.
Amazing. I mean, I feel like this truly was a personal like, you know, masterclass for how I'm going to grow my newsletter. I mean, you have just like so much like super tactical advice.
I love this stuff. Yeah.
So I cannot thank you enough for doing this. And I think, you know, we'll put this up on our socials and kind of distribute it for people who couldn't make the live session, but this was like amazing. Thank you so much, Nathan.
Thank you.